I'm going to say hi and welcome to our webinar on next steps as Canada makes the National School Food Program permanent. Today's webinar is the first session of the Coalition for Healthy School Foods annual planning meeting. The Coalition is Canada's largest school food network. We're made up of over 530 organizational members and endorsers from coast to coast to coast. We're really excited to welcome guest speakers today from across the country and the world to share emerging ideas, developments, and opportunities for school food in Canada as the national program rolls out. My name is Sarah Keys, and I'm the Ontario lead for the Coalition for Healthy School Food, which here in Ontario is hosted by Sustain Ontario. I live and work in Ottawa, which is traditional and unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. And I'm really excited to be facilitating today's public panel, after which we'll be moving to the rest of our planning meeting. Turning it over to our speakers, I'm so pleased to welcome and thank our fantastic panel who will be speaking on key issues that the Coalition will be working on and working towards over the next year. So we'll be hearing from Dr. Donald Bundy, calling in from the UK, Wendy Smith, located in Ontario, Amy Gasparato, who's in Nova Scotia, and Courtney Wheelton, who's in the Yukon. So I'm going to introduce each panelist before they speak, and I'm going to turn it first to our keynote speaker, Dr. Donald Bundy. Dr. Bundy is joining us from London, England, after having just returned from Ethiopia and on his way to Denmark next week. Donald is a professor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and the lead of the Global Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition. He's a founding member of the Global School Meals Coalition, and it is such an honor to welcome Donald thank you for being here today to share lessons from around the world to inform Canada's school food legislation. Over to you, Donald.
Well, hello there, and thank you, Sarah, for that very kind introduction. It's wonderful to be with the team on this, I think, really memorable moment in the evolution of the program in Canada. I've enjoyed being part of the build up to this, the tension, the excitement as this moment approaches. So thank you very much for this. If I can just put up some slides to illustrate the points I want to make. The title we've come up with is "When School Food Becomes Law." This is to indicate we're dealing with something permanent. It's really a very solid, a really very solid moment, a very important moment. You are to be congratulated on. And what we're really saying here is we want to give a global perspective from the research consortium side. So my next slide, really my next part, shall I say, in my presentation is I want to say that this is really an unprecedented global movement that Canada is part of. Indeed, Canada is leading in. This is about investing in future generations, and what we've seen over the last few years has been really dramatic. Over the last 4 years, we've seen an increase of 80 million in the number of children being fed every day. We've seen countries that have, and that's in the countries that are already had programs. But we've now seen countries coming forward who've never had programs to roll out the programs of their own. Notably, the fourth most populous country in the world, Indonesia, that from January has started out rolling out its program, amazingly reaching today 42 million children on a daily basis with their program. But also we're hearing about Denmark now piloting a program again for the first time, and then of course the wonderful story of Canada coming through on this. And we ask ourselves, what's happening here? Why is there this global movement that's taking us forward? Well, I'll just remind us about the starting point for this, certainly in terms of the School Meals Coalition, was 2020, where in January we were seeing 388 million children being fed every day worldwide. And then by April, 370 million were not being fed, were not receiving meals because we decided that closing schools was an important part of responding to COVID. What it did show was a wonderful counterfactual evidence of the value of schools. Worldwide, people discovered that that if children weren't in school, of course they didn't learn, but lots of things also went severely wrong. We saw a great rise in teen pregnancy. We saw early marriage. We saw inappropriate work amongst what used to be school boys. And we've seen long-term, some of the longest term consequences of COVID in terms of exam results following on from that. And so all of that, all of those concerns led rapidly by October 2021 to countries getting together. And I'm going to emphasize that it was countries, not the UN system led, but country led process of creating a coalition to think about how do we reopen schools, how do we move forward, what is it that matters. Today we have 112 countries in that school meals coalition. The coalition represents 67% of the global population. It's co-chaired by President Lula of Brazil, President Stubb of Finland, and President Macron of France. And it for many people, is seen as one of the largest multilateral consequences of the pandemic. And that coalition itself called for the creation of a research consortium to identify the policy and evidence issues around school meals. And so here's the structure of the organization that we created. At the top, there's the bosses, that's the countries, including Canada, of course. Then the small secretariat based at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And then the real work, which is done by this amazing group of people who lead the communities of practice. And you can see we have many different communities of practice that have brought their ideas to bear. And this is all about generating and curating evidence to provide policymakers with programmatic guidance. And to make this all work, we've created an academy, a worldwide academy, now more than 1,300 professors and practitioners from 127 countries. It's an extraordinary spread, and you can see how Canada stars well in this contribution. So what we're seeing here is the development of an academy, a think tank that has led to rethinking some of the approaches to school meals, and we're very glad that many Canadians are part of that. So where we are now, 4 years after creating that coalition, is the world's now reaching 466 million children every day at school, more than half of the world's population. So why has this happened? Where is it that countries are now doing this, investing in the first 8,000 of days of life to shape our future? And this is just a cartoon to capture an important change in the way we've been thinking about the life course. For many years, we focused on the first 1,000 days, vitally important time in a child's life. But now we're recognizing that the next 7,000 days are a time when we need to continue our investment, the time when children are being educated, when they're at school, and when they're passing through puberty and many other vulnerability changes. And so that investing throughout those 8,000 days is the big story of school meals, and that investing in that time has big benefits for education. We've got now very clear evidence. UNESCO announced last year for the first time how important it was that the well-being of children was a topic for investment, that nearly $3 trillion were being invested in education, but the education was only going to work if the learner was able to learn. And on the other side, the left-hand side of this graph, we just got some of the clear evidence from research to show that both numeracy and literacy are significantly impacted by ill health or lack of well-being. And then moving on from that, the realization that the school meals and food systems can teach children at a vital point in their lives what are the right foods to eat for their health, but also the right foods to eat in terms of planetary health, and that the lifelong learnings from those early years can have a potential impact even in middle age on non-communicable diseases. And that's actually defining that area is one of our areas of research in this coming year. And so, where does this all add up to? It adds up to two huge returns on investment. First, there's the straightforward economic returns that we're used to thinking about. So, school meals programs, one school meal program delivers returns on multiple sectors. Returns to social protection, to education, to agriculture, to health and nutrition. We could add gender and a whole range of other sectors that also benefit and benefit economically from this intervention. And we say nowadays that for each dollar invested, somewhere between $7 and $30+ in return from adding up all of these sectoral returns. But the bigger picture of all of that is important too. And I'm always very seized with this graph, which looks at the human capital index. Human capital is the sum of our community's health, skills, knowledge, and fitness and longevity. It seeks to quantify what's the value of the human population going forward. And what we can see is that education and well-being are key to that, and that if we look at the distribution of human capital versus the GDP for different nations, so the graph on the right, each dot is a different country, we can see that the richer countries, the countries on the right end, have higher human capital than the lower income countries. It's an extraordinarily well aligned relationship, and it tells a terrible story because it means at the lower end of the economic scale, it means that people are not achieving their full potential in life, and also that those countries are not achieving the full potential from their communities, the full contribution. We need a change, and I think that this is for many people looking at the financing of school meals, very salutary figure. So that's the background to all of this. This investment in people has become a global investment, and we're now seeing that from countries across the world, and we're now seeing that very specifically in Canada. And so the final step in this is when school food becomes law, because this is now crystallizing the reality of this investment. And what are we trying to achieve with this kind of investment? Well, here are six items that were identified in an analysis that attempted to look at what were the key responses to making this a permanent program, to secure the budget allocation, to maintain sustainability across political cycles. I can say in the UK that the school meals programs have survived 30 changes of government, to maintain efficiency and transparency, to clarify roles across sectors, to align with the rights determined by the country, and to provide an institutional foundation for national ownership. And that all of those six things really only come when you enshrine the programs in law. And if we look at programs across the globe, we can really characterize them into two groups. Those that are rights-based, in which school meals are seen as an entitlement of the individual, and needs-based, in which school meals are seen as a service, that's a process that's provided by government. And we can see that some of the outstanding programs in the world, and these are the ones on the right are some examples of that, can be characterized into these two groups. With the rights-based approach, really recognizing that the rights of the individual, the entitlement of the individual, the needs-based approach, talking more about the process of delivery. And let's just relate this now back to Canada. That's the big topic for this evening, and how Canada really is providing a forefront to this global movement. And I have to say that having looked carefully at your plans, that your proposed school food program offers both the stability of needs-based legislation and the protections of the right-based approach. In fact, it really does seem to take on the advantages of the best of both worlds, involving both of those approaches with stable financing, equity across provinces and territories, long-term sustainability, clear governance and cross-sector alignment, and future-proofing the program across political cycles. And so it provides a very strong foundation moving forward. And we just figure here the school meals case study that we conducted for Canada some years ago, that actually people on this call helped prepare this. And one of the things we wanted to just emphasize was that kind of gives you something of a baseline in terms of the process, and that we look forward to collaborating with you on tracking this as it goes forward. And I wanted to share with you just three thoughts that I think are important in developing this area. The first is the recognition that these kinds of programs can provide really important equity. In the European Union, the EU created the EU Child Guarantee, the guarantee that children across Europe should have a common experience when they go to school. And 26 out of the 27 countries in the Union chose school meals as one of the ways of achieving that. Because one of the big questions is, how do we break the cycle of poverty when children who come from households which may be dysfunctional or threatened have less support than children coming from other kinds of households? And that by providing a stable, equal opportunity in school, by ensuring the well-being of children irrespective of their circumstances, you can guarantee equity. That's a very clear part of the message. The second question
Ronald,
that I
you
wanted to raise.
just have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm on time. The second question I wanted to raise was lifelong healthy choices, that children understanding what food they should eat at school age, that understanding carries on lifelong and has potential consequences for health throughout life. But nowadays, because we also understand what we should eat in terms of sustainability, in terms of planetary health, means that those choices that people make lifelong can also be very important in terms of climate change. And building that into the school system is the second issue I wanted to raise. And the third issue is a much more political one, and it's about the source of the food in school meals. A focus on local produce has been a characteristic of programs across the world, varying from 30 to 70% of the diet. And this is one of the ways, for example, in the Canadian situation, of investing in provincial agriculture. And thinking carefully about the source of food is going to be a key part, I think, about how your program becomes sustainable. So that's what I wanted to. Those are the thoughts I wanted to leave you with. Many of the people on this call are already part of our global academy. We always want to have a really representative voice. So if there are others that out there who would like to join, please get in touch with us. We'd be delighted to have you. So congratulations to Canada for this memorable day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bundy. It was really great to hear your perspectives and everything you had to share. Really great to hear that you think Canada is already on the right track in terms of our legislation. And thank you for leaving us with those elements to think about as we move forward. So appreciate your time today. And again, yeah, really want to thank you for joining us. Okay, so next I'm going to hand it over to Wendy Smith. I'll ask Wendy to share your screen, please. Wendy Smith is a sourcing manager from Mohawk Medbee Corporation, and she's going to be sharing about ideas on the Buy Canadian in school food program. Wendy has over 30 years of institutional procurement experience focused on healthcare and student nutrition. And she is on the board of the organization Nourish directors and sits on the Canadian Food Policy Advisory Council advising the federal government. Thanks so much, Wendy, for being here today. Excited to hear your talk.
Thank you, Sarah. Hoping everyone can hear me all right. I'm very excited to be here today. I have long had a personal investment in school food, and I want to congratulate each of you on the permanence of the program and hope that it just grows and grows. My purpose to talk to you today is about procurement. Procurement is a very important piece. You know, the what and the who is very important, but also the how. So I have 33 years of institutional procurement. I work for Mohawk Medbee Corporation, and that's full disclosure, a nonprofit group purchasing organization. I won't specifically talk about that. I'll talk about all the ways in which you can buy food and where you're sourcing your food is very important today. So we are a nonprofit that is in 3 provinces currently. We have traditionally served healthcare since 1992. In 2013, we welcomed student nutrition into the fold in Ontario, and we assist 5 regions with their procurement needs. Where our contracts are divided out by categories, and there are places and ways in which this kind of procurement makes sense for you. But let's talk about all of them. So first, I want to start with an anchor institution because it's a very important concept in public procurement that I think folks should know and understand when they foray into this work. Publicly funded institutions are supposed to spend in ways that benefit the people they serve and not just the end user. So when we think about hospitals, universities, correction facilities, all of the folks who serve people in our province, in our country, the ways in which they're buying the food and supplies that they need actually can hurt or help the economy, the community, and society writ large. So it's very important that we're more intentional when we're spending tax dollars on the things that we need. You know, we all have personal values about the ways in which we buy the things we need. We need to bring those into our professional life when we make choices. Specifically, when we talk about the return on investment for local food procurement in Ontario, I can tell you from extensive work with the Greenbelt Fund that it is $4 to $7, depending on the community, return on investment into the community for every dollar you spend in your region on food. So procurement is a critical opportunity to advance food is health. Purchasers can build health and wellness by building relationships with producers of food and people who process food, and finally the people who even bring their food to them. And program leads in this work can build this same kind of health in their community by educating students as to where their food is coming from and why it's important that they're eating that food. When we talk about the models of procurement to consider when you have a sizable sum of money to spend on food, you know, you have evolved a great deal from catching the loss leaders at the grocery store to try and feed as many kids as you can. Now this is a permanent program with permanent funding that we hope will meet all of your needs over time. We realize it's not enough right now, but hopefully in time it will be. So the first mode of procurement that folks can lean to is a prime vendor. That's where you decide to partner with one organization to meet all of your needs for food procurement. While there are advantages to this, you'll get service and you'll get one invoice and you'll get one delivery. There are disadvantages as well because you've now turned the food system into a push where the vendor is pushing the products to you that they carry rather than you pulling the products that you want to see on your students' plates. The second is not-for-profit group purchasing, which I alluded to earlier. That aggregates volumes across many institutions looking for economies of scale. So if everybody is buying let's say a multigrain bagel to meet their needs. You can put all of those volumes into one basket and put out a tender and get your product when you need it at the right time for a very good price. It offers member support, contract management, and consistent service and pricing. Food hubs are another great way to procure food, particularly in rural and suburban regions where you can collaborate among like-minded organizations, maybe aggregate from several farms where one farm couldn't meet your needs, but four could. And if you have them all come to the same place and be processed, you could get local regional carrot sticks to everybody. That's an example of a great way that a food hub can work for you. It's best for fresh and local products. And then finally, as an organization, you could put out your own tender for your food needs. And some do that. You see that sometimes in municipalities or different larger size organizations. While it lets your specifications be very clear as to what you want from vendors, there is some risk involved in that you don't know what you don't know as you're standing alone in your procurement. So the right approach to procurement can depend on the products. Places where aggregated purchasing makes sense are things like packaged goods, shelf-stable items, so staples that you'd find in your pantry, cereals, yogurts, packaged cheeses, some frozen fruits and vegetables, breads, bagels, that kind of thing makes sense to aggregate your purchasing, particularly if it's something that only comes from a multinational, like a packaged salad dressing. Where direct sourcing makes more sense, that's where there's it would be a recommendation that you engage with local suppliers, producers in your area, and make your procurement more intentional and specific. So local fruits and vegetables, some dairy products, meats, things that you can find in your region through local producers. And if you're unsure how to make these connections or who to speak to, your provincial resources like Food in Ontario here, Foodland Ontario is a brilliant resource. I meet with them monthly to talk about what's new in Ontario and how we can fold them into our contract process. And I highly recommend that you connect with your Ministry of Ag to see who can help you in your region, because there are regional operatives in ministries of Ags within every province and territory in the country. When we talk about the idea of social procurement, that means you're making choices that benefit your community. So a good contract means that everybody wins. The person buying the product is getting a fair price and good service. The person selling the product is getting a fair price and able to grow their business. The person receiving the product knows that it was purchased with care and intention, and the community where the product was produced is benefiting from the influx of dollars to the economy. So it's a four-part circle. When you're buying products with tax dollars, everyone should benefit. It should be a good deal all the way around. And why social procurement is so important in school food is that it allows you to, much like this is a model from Nourish that we use for better food in healthcare. So you're allowed to, it allows you to have influence. Now you're talking about a lot more money. You can literally shift the food system with this money. You can literally shape behavior of the folks who grow and produce food in this country. In healthcare, we spend $4 billion a year on food. And if we all bought our food for healthcare with intention, people would grow and produce and deliver it to us in a manner that was sustainable and equitable. And so we really need to be intentional in the questions that we ask, in the ways in which we buy food, and make sure that we're partnering with folks who are looking in the same direction. And again, that models healthy, sustainable eating to the students, which is the true investment here in the program. So, suggestions for you when you're looking at buying food at this scale is take your provincial regulations around trade, around thresholds, and if you want any more information on that, I can certainly help you with almost every province's provincial regulations, federal trade regulations. So these things are requirements of the way you buy food when you're over certain thresholds, but add your own questions. What is of value to us? So add questions about sustainability and the plans of the company that's providing you with food towards sustainability. Ask questions about the vendors attention and engagement with Call to Action 92 around businesses in Canada in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations. You'll be surprised what you find. We expected when we asked these questions that the scores would be very low, but in fact, many vendors are working very hard at these issues, and they should be rewarded with public dollars and business for doing that work. Food procurement is about relationships, and so it is really important that now that you're someone who's going to be feeding our vulnerable students and turning them into healthy, wise citizens, that you're engaged with the food system around you, that the students are engaged with the food system around them, and that you're putting those dollars to good work in every way that you can. And that's what I have for you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Right on time. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for walking us through all of that. So many important models to consider in terms of procurement and really the importance of social procurement when it comes to school food and the impacts that that can have on food systems. Very important ideas to consider as we continue to roll out our national program. So really want to thank you. Okay, so next I'm going to turn it over to Amy Gasparotto. Amy, if you could share your screen. Amy Gasparotto is the Executive Director of Nourish Nova Scotia, and she'll be sharing about the growth of Nova Scotia's lunch program. Amy is a nonprofit leader with over 15 years of experience developing community-based initiatives that promote health, challenge inequalities, strengthen local communities, and support sustainable food systems. Really excited to hear from you today. Amy, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Is my volume good? Yeah, okay, perfect. So hello, everyone. My name's Amy Gasparetto, and I am the Executive Director of Nourish Nova Scotia. So we're a provincial charity that works to inspire and equip youth to learn about food and transform the food systems around them. We've always played a central role in the development of school food programs, beginning with our inception in 2013 and the expansion of the Nova Scotia Provincial Breakfast Program. Increasingly, our organization strives to engage young people across school and community settings in many different ways, from co-designing programs to youth-led food initiatives and advocacy. When it comes to the growth of school food programs in Nova Scotia, it's been a journey to get where we are. Recently, we've been reflecting back on this, and it dates back 20 years, really, with the launch of a healthy eating strategy in Nova Scotia, which really was the impetus for the first food and nutrition policy in public schools in Nova Scotia. And along the way, there have been numerous instances of schools and regions testing approaches to school meal programs. And this includes a pay what you can approach. And these milestones have really brought us to today with significant investments in school food, both at the provincial and, of course, the federal government. So as part of the 2024-25 provincial budget, the Nova Scotia government announced an $18.8 million investment towards a school lunch program in our province, with a commitment to grow to $100 million annually. And a few things have really stood out to me about the growth of this program. So one is the interdepartmental collaboration. So there were 10 government departments involved in the design of this program, significant financial investment. So I know it's the largest provincial investment across Canada right now, with a commitment to grow that investment over time. The scale and the speed at which this program is developing is very, very fast. And of course, it's built on the platform of making life more affordable for families, which I believe is really guiding some of the decision making in Nova Scotia. So it was said that the program was going to roll out across 4 years, but many signs are pointing to 3. The first phase launched for the start of the 2024-25 school year and included all elementary schools across the province. Phase 2 launched at the start of this school year and expanded to all middle school and junior high schools. So in terms of the pace, it's certainly demonstrating a lot of benefits through rapid learning and early impact. And at the same time, there are challenges inherent in this rapid scaling. So in Nova Scotia, there's 3 unique delivery models, which to me provide really important context for how things are working here. As is the case in many jurisdictions, schools here were not originally designed to handle food production and service at this scale. And so the lunch program is becoming a real catalyst for mobilizing a range of different solutions. In schools where existing infrastructure could handle it, meals are produced on site or third-party contractors come into the school to prepare the food. And where there's no facilities, off-site food vendors are contracted to prepare and deliver the food to schools. And so as the program grows, there's really an active shift towards this self-operated model so that schools can produce food on site. And this, of course, has its own set of implications. Nova Scotia has adopted a pay what you can model, which we've seen in PEI and other regions. And I'm sharing this. I found this very interesting. So CBC obtained payment data through the Freedom of Information Act, which they shared. And in the first year of the program, roughly 4% of meals were fully paid for and 33% were partially paid for. And 6 months later, those figures dropped to 2% full payment and 10% partial payment. I think there's a lot to dig into just in the context of this pay what you can model. But in Nova Scotia, an important thing to highlight is that there's very little communication around this aspect of the program, and no sort of expectation put on families to pay for meals. The Nova Scotia school lunch program is definitely bringing more people to the table in terms of creating new opportunities for collaborative food systems change. So this is an example. Upward Kitchen is a food vendor in the Halifax region that started with delivery to 10 schools and expanded to 30 in the second year of the program. This has translated for them to expanded infrastructure, new jobs, and a program that invites students into their kitchens. Food waste continues to surface as both a concern and a challenge. So from excess meals to unexpected school closures to uneaten food. Early in the program, we heard from Second Harvest, which began working with a school vendor in the Halifax region to recover surplus ingredients. And in January, they'll be expanding this work to the Cape Breton region, really based on collaborative efforts with school staff and food service providers. But at the end of the day, the food waste issue is coming up in a lot of different ways. And another interesting partnership has been in the Annapolis Valley with the Station Food Hub. So they were processing apple slices for the IWK and recognized both the need and opportunity to expand local food processing to schools. So with provincial and federal funding programs, they're making major infrastructure investments to scale up production and look at other menu items that they can supply. So as these programs grow, student and parent engagement remains so vital, as we all know, and some of this is taking shape in Nova Scotia, but we recognize that a lot more is going to be needed. And one unique development I wanted to point out is at Northumberland Regional High in Pictou County, which has become a site for early exploration of the program in high schools. So here there's an existing lunch program called Karma Lunch that is student-led and serves 200 meals a day. And so when asked to adopt the provincial menu, Karma Lunch declined to preserve youth leadership in shaping meals, so the lunch program was introduced alongside it. However, it's free and there's no advance ordering, which is a change from the current system. And so each program now serves roughly 200 meals today. And I think there's so much to learn from this, but it's interesting that it's being explored in high schools in this way. So as many of us know, and as what's been shared in the presentation so far, is that school food is itself a lever within the broader food system and with the potential to catalyze change across so many different dimensions. And we're already seeing some of that emerge. Within the school food system, we can now start to see opportunities for shifts that will amplify these benefits for students and the province as a whole. And so we're really seeing this around like menu design and really aligning that with foods produced in Nova Scotia, interactive service models, staff development and training, and of course, food literacy, but so much more. As I mentioned, Nourish Nova Scotia doesn't run the school food program. And I think if we did, I don't think we'd have time for anything else. It's been very interesting watching this program scale, and I know that so much learning is being drawn out from what's happening so far. It's also very clear that to cultivate the many different co-benefits we're describing, it's going to take a lot more time, very diverse school community partnerships, and really focused investments. And so as it grows, our organization is really helping to illuminate the full potential of the program and really focus our efforts on student engagement and food literacy. And one of the big projects we worked on this year is a cookbook, which is really about all of these things: awareness, education, food literacy. It's called What's for Lunch. And while it features the most loved recipes from the program, it's also a true celebration of what's happening in Nova Scotia schools around food and all of the people that bring these programs to life. And last slide, we celebrated the launch of the cookbook at a public event in Halifax called Nourish Fest. And it was really such a joyful celebration of school food programs and youth food literacy in general. And for me, it really hit home the importance of both recognizing and celebrating all the work that's already been done so that we can sort of move into that potential and where we need to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was fantastic. So good to hear about the rollout of the program and all the details in terms of the successes and challenges and opportunities and new partnerships being forged. Really interesting to hear about the cross department collaboration at the beginning there too, and then how on board the whole government is. And yeah, your work to engage students and really, seeing how it interacts with the food system in Nova Scotia and how it's a lever. It's all really great work. So yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. So lastly, we're going to move to our last speaker, who is Courtney Wheelton. I'll ask you to share your slides, please. She is the director of the First Nations initiatives at the Yukon First Nation Education Directorate. She's going to close our session by sharing about their nutrition program. So Courtney is from Tahltan Nation, based in Telegraph Creek, British Columbia. She's born and raised a Yukoner with family ties to the Kwalin First Nation. She has managed several Yukon-based projects with a particular focus in cultural programming, information, and events management. Welcome, Courtney, and thanks so much for sharing today.
Thank you. Sorry, I just am realizing that I am struggling a bit here to see my notes at the same time. Okay, I'm just going to pull this up. And let's see. Okay. Sorry, everyone. It was working earlier. Okay, I'm just going to do it from this way because I know we are short on time. Hopefully everyone can still see everything okay. So my name is Courtney Wheelton, and I'm the director of the Director of First Nations Initiatives from the Yukon First Nation Education Directorate in Whitehorse, Yukon. I'm a member of the Tahltan Nation, and I currently reside in Whitehorse, Yukon, on the traditional territory of the Kwalin First Nation and the Tahnquachin Council. So YFNED is a not-for-profit organization, which is steered by the Chiefs Committee on Education. We were launched in 2020 in response to a long overdue need for unified control over First Nation education. We do what we do because we want students to excel in both worlds. We want them to be lifelong learners, for them to know and practice their traditional laws, values, and morals. And every decision we make, our children are at our center. Before I hop in to talk about our programs, I want to acknowledge Jordan River Anderson and Jordan's principal. Jordan's principle aims to make sure First Nation children can access all public service in a way that's reflective of their distinct cultural needs. Without Jordan, without Dr. Cindy Blackstock, and without the implementation of Jordan's principle, our organization and our wraparound servants wouldn't exist the way that they do. So we owe the success of our work to Jordan and his family. Just a little bit of context about our organization. We do work on a wraparound service model. So we have our early years program, our mobile therapeutic unit, our First Nation education advocates, cultural connections, our rural and urban nutrition programs. And then on the wheel, we have our numeracy and our trades program as well. So our YFNED nutrition program provides equitable and healthy lunch to Indigenous children aged 0 to 18 living in the Yukon. It's a two-pronged approach focusing on the rural communities and our Whitehorse-based urban program. The rural program began first. This often doesn't happen in the Yukon. Usually things start in Whitehorse and then are transferred to the communities. I'm not saying that that's the right way to do things. So this is really special where it began from a community challenge. So it started at the J.V. Clark School in Mayo on the traditional territory of the First Nation of Natronach Dun. One of my actually cousins, Reg, was struggling to engage youth in the school system, and he recognized that consistent access to nutrient-dense food was one of the challenges. So he proposed a school-based meal program that would increase attendance. He worked with our sister organization to put in a request to Jordan's principal for their community nutrition program, and it was approved. Attendance at the school almost immediately increased, and with that, student engagement also increased. The program expanded, reaching 13 communities, and in 2020, we opened in the urban center of Whitehorse. So our model has remained similar over the last, I think it's 7 years, with some slight adjustments as our program evolved. It's always been based on the number of Indigenous students in the territory, and it includes a budget of $16 a day per child for food alone. Living in the north is expensive, so this number reflects that. It also includes adequate resources for freight, materials and supplies, and wages for the kitchen staff. From the start, we knew our program needed to be unique. It was a community solution to a community problem, and it needed to continue with that spirit and intent. We've always held strong the belief that food is culture, food is community, food is connection, both to ourselves, to our families, and to the world around us. And because of this, we have a strong component of our program that focuses on healthy traditional food practices, such as seasonal harvesting. The program has been a resounding success. Since 2018, all 12 rural First Nation communities have the resources to provide breakfasts, hot lunches, snacks to schools and daycares. They also offer food hampers over school breaks and opportunities for youth to participate in traditional harvesting practices. What makes the rural program unique is YFNED applies for the funding, but the transfer payment agreement goes directly to each nation. So this means that each nation has full autonomy over the implementation of their program. Each community is unique, especially in their geographical area. So we empower them to run a program that works best for their community, and we're available for support and capacity development. I've included the investment in our program because it is quite significant over the last, I think it's 7 years. And you can see it's grown each year to reflect the increased cost of living in the north, as well as the complexities of implementing these programs. Similar to what Amy was just talking about, we've had to look at many different models. There hasn't been a way to make it one model fit all, and infrastructure is our top challenge. Most of our team work in ministry-led schools that have residential style kitchens that are not made to operate a full-scale food program. You'll see an increase in the urban program mostly for this reason, because we've had to rent 3 satellite kitchens to support the work of the program. And if you look closely at this chart, you'll see that the rural nutrition program does not have an allocated budget for 2025, 2026, and 26-27. Because the rural and the urban programs were started in different years, they are on different funding cycles. Unfortunately, the rural project came up for renewal as of April 1st. We were extended until the end of the school year, but when we resubmitted our request for the program to continue to Jordan's principal, it was denied on August 29th, which was a week after school had started in the Yukon. So the impact on our communities has been devastating. Over 1,000 First Nation children no longer have access to consistent nutrient-dense meals. A program that's been successful for the last 7 years has been abruptly ended with no replacement in sight. To further complicate it, we also have our urban program, which still has funding until March 31st, 2027. So now in the Yukon, access to healthy school-based meals depends solely on the community that you live in. So YFNED and Yukon First Nations are fighting the decision. We've submitted an appeal and have engaged our legal teams. We're working with our partners, including the Coalition for Healthy School Food, to present a strong case on the continuation of the program. I do realize, especially as the last speaker, this webinar was talked about the future of school food programs, and I've kind of led us into a bit of a heartbreaking place. But we are very excited to see the federal government recognize the importance of school food programs because we know the power that a warm meal and a safe space can provide to children, whether First Nations or not. We really look forward to working with the government of Yukon to implement the National School Food Program investment within our territory. Although I would like to note that the current offering has been 7.3 million over 3 years, which is not enough to sustain our current program, let alone to include every child. And unfortunately, none of these dollars have been released to community organizations yet. So children in the Yukon have not seen the benefit of this investment. I want to end with this picture and her sweet face. This little one was at one of our past engagement sessions and was telling the crowd her favorite food, which, no surprise, living in the Yukon, was moose meat. We will continue to fight for our program and the expansion of a universal school food program because we do it for our children. As I know everyone on this call knows, we know the impact these programs can have and how important they are for our communities. We know the power, the joy, and the cultural significance of good food. Thank you all for having me today.
Thank you so much, Courtney. It was really great to hear from you. Really great to hear about how your program got started and how it centers community and culture and connection. It's such a comprehensive program. I'm really sorry to hear all the challenges that you've been experiencing, but I know our coalition is on board to continue working with you and getting those programs back up and running. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks.
Okay, so we just have a few minutes for questions and question period. Thanks, Ken, for putting the slides down, and we're going to open it up. So I welcome you to raise your hand and ask any questions you have for the panelists. We have a few questions that have come through the chat, but yeah, if anybody wants to raise their hand, I'll take those as well. I don't see any hands right now, so I'll start us off with the first question that came in through the chat from Selena, who asked, you just raised your hand. Did you want to pop off your mic and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm wondering about having been a food producer in the past. I was fascinated to hear Wendy's presentation. Wondering if couple of things. We look at best practices around the world in terms of which countries, which examples are best able to cost efficiently produce school lunches. And also, somebody raised in the chat about frozen produce, which I found was really cost efficient way of I would like buy in peak season, process and freeze it for the year's use. Is that looked at? I guess the question's for Wendy on this. And 650 seemed high for per lunch if we're factoring in the opportunity for cost efficiencies.
I won't comment on the cost of lunch in Nova Scotia, but I will tell you that frozen fruits is a cost-effective way, absolutely, and a great way to partner with producers. I did some work in the region of Score, which is South Central Ontario, around a virtual food hub, where we could find producers with extra space and storage in different ways, and other producers who had product that we could buy and store. And I think there's potential for that kind of work once we get organized, a little more organized. But in the meantime, absolutely, fresh is best, but we live in a seasonal country. So frozen fruits and vegetables are a great way to support local producers and store it at best price and peak freshness.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, I see a couple more questions in the chat here. There was one that came through earlier about celiac. So will there be gluten-free options for celiac children? I don't know who this is directed to specifically, but asking how we can ensure access to safe food with this equality and equity in mind. Does anybody want to speak to that?
I don't know if that was in relation to Nova Scotia's program. No gluten-free. They're developing a menu that includes gluten-friendly items, and I think that's, has to do with a lot with infrastructure, the processing facilities, where food is prepared. It's not consistent across the province, even close. And so I think they're trying to manage risk. And at the same time, the menu needs a lot more variety. And from phase one to phase two, it expanded a lot. 20 new menu items were added, but there's a lot of conversation around inclusivity and expanding the menu for sure. But I don't think we'll ever see a move to gluten-free.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, noting we just have 1 minute left. Does anybody have any final questions before we close our panel?